Hello, welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is a review of the 1999 documentary film Trekkies. So I reviewed Into Darkness fairly recently, and I saw this on Netflix and thought, that's quite interesting. And one of the things I've taken away from this documentary is the fact that Star Trek fans can't agree whether they're called Trekkers or Trekkies or Trekkens and all the different possible connotations of all those different things. It's quite interesting. So what's my Star Trek background? Well, to be honest, I was never much of a Star Trek fan. I always used to enjoy Deep Space Nine, as it was called, basically when there was fighting going on and blowing things up, but I never really got into the Star Trek mentality of the UN in space, basically. My idea of space exploration was always a bit more sort of British, and as much as it was a lot nastier and darker and dirtier, and Star Trek to me came across as smug Yankees going around in ridiculous coloured jumpsuits. But fine, it seemed to be very clever. There's very little drinking of stagnant water and eating limes in space, and that's pretty much what I think it would be like. So this is a film of talking heads. It's got the original cast. There's the Shatner being self-important. There's the guy that played Scotty telling us how he talked a woman out of suicide. That's a really touching moment. I know he died a couple of years ago, and that's a real shame because he seemed like a really nice guy, and he's from Canada. Imagine that Scotty was putting on that impression the whole time. The woman who plays Captain Janeway's here and talking about how it's fantastic for women to see a woman in authority, telling, kids, you can be anything you want to be. Hang on a second, you can be anything you want to be. What, you mean like a television actor playing a part of a female captain? The kids can't literally become a starship captain, can they? They can so women can become an actress. Well, that's nothing new. What about Margaret Thatcher? So I thought that irked me somewhat, because that showed an incredible lack of self-awareness there, and that didn't really make any sense. We get some good kooky stuff here. So there's a male Star Trek fan singing Star Trek folk songs, but he can't actually remember the words, and he's dressed as a NASA astronaut character from Star Trek, but he's changed it somewhat, so he's not actually the astronaut, but he's dressed as the astronaut's wife, which is quite interesting. It's a film chock full of strange and alienated people who find a sort of common ground and a common sense of identity in being slightly odd, and it's nice to see them rallying around what Star Trek is supposed to stand for. It's the marriage of science with imagination, which is very nice. So to me, on the outside, Star Trek fans seem like very strange people. Very nice people, but very strange. There's a chap with a Klingon symbol tattooed on his body, and it turns out he did that himself. There's some surprisingly attractive ladies learning Klingon in there. There's also a pretty lady who's obsessed with Commander Data and the actor who plays him. I'm aware that all sounds quite shallow, but if you close your eyes and imagine Star Trek groupies, I very much suspect that they're not attractive. Jonathan Frakes, the actor who played Lieutenant Riker, is in there, and he laughs about the whole thing. He's got a good sense of awareness. George Takei's in there, and his voice, for whatever reason, is ridiculously hypnotic. It's got a very strange quality to it, which I like very much. So it's a fun documentary full of kooky stuff. You don't really learn anything new about Star Trek. We knew people learned Klingon. We know they're dressed up sort of strangely. We're not surprised that people send strange letters. My reservation about the film really is the fact that we don't spend enough time with any of the more interesting fans. So, for example, there's a slightly effeminate teenage boy who loves Star Trek and loves dressing up in the Star Trek costumes. But we never really get a sense of why he's so obsessed with this program and the whole subculture and how it's organically grown over the years. It's funny how I'm not entirely convinced any of the shows were really that popular at any given time when they were on the air. It's very much a cult sort of show, in as much as I know that the original series was cancelled. I know that Voyager was cancelled, and Enterprise, I think, which was the most recent one, they were all cancelled. There aren't really any searching or interesting questions here. It's just sort of the crazy stuff that nerds do. We never get a sense of why they're doing this. The best thing for me would be if Werner Herzog were to remake this documentary. He'd film an hour and 34 minutes of actual footage. He'd edit out about 2 minutes and 12 seconds of that footage, and then from Werner making that film in the course of a day, we get into the very soul of these Trekkies, and I love Werner Herzog. So it's fine. It's have a beer and laugh at some strange people, but it's no more than that, which is really unfortunate, because I'm interested as an outsider. I'm very interested. I know Trekkies do strange things. That's fine, and I accept that. I just want to know why they do the strange things, and that's where this film is somewhat limited. It's a bit of fun and no more. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.